Donc, bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à notre journée porte ouverte résilience climatique et communautaire. Aujourd'hui, à la ville, on a plusieurs activités, dont des conférences. So the conference we have today, this afternoon, is by Mr. Graham Mogg. He's going to be talking about preparing at home for climatic incidents, his experience and how he set up his home. À 4 heures, on a une autre conférence qui s'appelle « Se préparer pour l'avenir, cohabiter avec l'eau et protéger son domicile ». And later this evening at 6:30, we have Preparing Together, the Power of Neighbors in Climate Resilience. Si vous avez besoin de la traduction, on utilise l'application Wordly qui va faire une traduction automatique sur votre cellulaire. Si vous avez besoin, vous pouvez venir me voir. And these presentations will be recorded and made available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. Later on, if you wish to go to the council chamber, we have some kiosks set up about the stormwater network. Se préparer chez soi et se préparer ensemble. Un dernier petit mot avant de commencer. Aujourd'hui, c'est le lancement officiel de l'application Partage Club. Grâce à cette application mobile, les résidents peuvent facilement prêter, emprunter des objets ou demander des services entre voisins dans un esprit de confiance et d'entraide. Fully bilingual, the app is designed to encourage local interactions and strengthen social connections within the community. Je vais vous présenter maintenant mon collègue Denis qui va présenter M. Mogg. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everybody. For those who doesn't know me yet, my name is Denis Chabot. I'm the director of the urban planning department here at the city. I've been here since 2003. It's a very important task that I have to give you today. I would like you to meet Graham Mogg. That is your person that will do the presentation for you guys. Je connais Monsieur Mogg depuis probably a dozen years. He's a member of the Planning Advisory Committee. Donc, c'est un membre du comité consultatif d'urbanisme. Ça joue un rôle très, très important dans la ville. They're making recommendations into new project, new construction, extension, and some new bylaws that we're inventing once in a while in our offices. So, we're not inventing anything. We're just copying people, you know. J'ai demandé à M. Mogg de venir faire une présentation. Pourquoi? M. Mogg has a knowledge of how to prepare his home. He's a member of the Pointe-Claire Rescue Squad for a long time. He has experience in firefighting. He has some EMS knowledge and practice. So preparing and protecting and getting ready, this is the guy, and I'm very pleased that he accepted our invitation. Monsieur Mogg.
Hi. So I'm Graham, and thank you for coming. Let me tell you what I'm not. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an employee of the city. However, I do sit on a citizens committee and work with the city. That's what I'm not. I'm not full-time employed anymore. I am part-time employed, still consulting and still helping my community where I can. I'm a former fire officer. I was in the second cohort of paramedics in Quebec in the 1970s. I know I don't look like I'm that old. Please tell me. And I'm still an active first responder on the West Island. And I've prepared a presentation for you that I hope you find interesting. Severe weather appears to be here to stay. It's a result of global climate change. You've already seen it. I don't need to convince you. Through this presentation, I will try and share my observations, both in my own home and in some of the work that I do outside of my home as a volunteer in the community. Hopefully, you will be a little bit better prepared to deal with what's coming. Climate change effects has implications on various features. The intensity is getting worse. We see that, we've seen it, we've lived it, we know it's true. Sea level's gonna rise. I'll get back to that in a second. We've seen heat waves and people have died here in Montreal as a result of heat waves. We've seen precipitation changes. We've seen much more rain than we have in the past. It is not following the same cycles it has in the past. The volume is more, and that is causing us some problems. Some of them that we can deal with, and some of them might be a little bit harder. Let me get back to sea level rise. How many people think that sea level rise is a problem that doesn't affect us? Nobody's got their hand up. I hope that means that nobody thinks that this is not a problem or that this is a problem that will not affect us. It will affect us. There are no locks in the seaway between Beaconsfield and Newfoundland. If the water goes up in Newfoundland, the water's coming up over here. If it goes up 3 meters over there, it's coming up 3 meters over here, right? There's no locks. Now, water doesn't go uphill, but water will always rise together. Okay, so that is something we need to be aware of. What can we reasonably expect? We can expect flooding, falling branches or trees, power failures, fires, and heat waves. Those are the things that in 45 minutes today, of which there's few of those left, that's probably as much as we can chew on today. So I'll get right to it. Before we get to that, however, I'd like to say a few words, as briefly as I possibly can, about risk management. Risk management is about two things. It's the likelihood of occurrence and the consequence of occurrence. This is a classic chart for risk management. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see quadrant 1, low risk. In the upper right-hand corner, high risk. So if the likelihood is high and the severity is high, that's the corner that we want to deal with first, right, in terms of prioritizing the tasks. This is a simplified and, in my view, somewhat inaccurate way of looking at it, and I'll get to that in just a second. This is, a second later, more what I like to look at in terms of a methodology for identifying, analyzing, mitigating, and eliminating risk. If I can identify a risk, is it likely that my house is going to flood in the next 12 months? I'm going to give it a 5. There's a chance, almost certainty, between 4 and 5, that I'm going to have a flood in the next 12 months. Right? I have to, because the severity is going to be, again, between 4 and 5, unless I do something about it first. Okay, now where I differentiate between the upper left quadrant and the lower right quadrant is I put more importance on consequence than I do on probability. If the probability is rare, but the consequence is catastrophic, I'm going to put much more emphasis on this number 5 versus that number 5. If it happens frequently and the results are insignificant, if rain happens frequently, my house doesn't flood. Am I going to do anything about the rain? No. Okay, so this is where I see a difference between the quadrant above the diagonal and the quadrant below the diagonal. Just as a manner of thinking. Here's a brain teaser. This is not an untypical backyard in Beaconsfield. It happens to be mine. My neighbors are sitting at least 6.5 feet above me. Who's at greater risk of flooding? Me. All right? When I go to my backyard and I look at this, I said, is it possible that they're going to flood? Yep. If they flood, is it probable I'm going to flood? Yeah. All right, so where you are, where your house is, what the topography is like, where the water's coming from, where it's going to, all comes into play in your planning. I can't do your planning for you. Denis Chabot cannot do your planning for you. You've got to do that, and that's why they've asked me to come and speak to you today. Before we even get to that, though, why do we have basements? There's only one reason we have basements, and that's to get the footings under the foundation low enough to be below the frost line. There's no basements in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, in Italy, certainly not in Venice. Nobody would have a basement if we didn't have to get our footings below the frost line. Right? That's more prevalent in the northern United States and in Canada than it is in any other place in the world, because we are in kind of a cold climate that is a little bit, I can't use the word unnatural, but if you think that Montreal and Milan, Italy are at the same latitude, wait a minute, there's palm trees in Italy. Where are my palm trees? Right? We're at the same distance from the pole. right? Is what that means. Climates are completely different. So that's really the reason why we have basements. Humans, in my opinion, were never designed to live underground. However, the space is there and we use it the best way we can, we hope. Flooding is something, and I can say in writing, we can expect to have more flooding in the future than we've had in the past. We've already seen that. We already know that's true. It will be both more frequent and more severe. There's one picture here that is not from the last 12 months. That's this one, right? That's the Cary Expressway from a long time ago. I don't remember the year. I think it was 1982, maybe. This was taken in Rigo last year. That, I believe, I'm not sure, I believe that was taken in Beaconsfield. So this is local. This is our backyard. This is going to happen, right? And what we do about it now is going to make a difference. I hope. There's one thing that you do need to know, because I've discovered that a lot of people don't. We as homeowners in Beaconsfield typically have insurance, but we may or may not have the right riders. For flooding, there are 4 riders that are necessary. There's 4 types of liability from flooding that exist in the marketplace, and if you don't have protection for the ones that you need, then you're going to be on your own. The first one is groundwater infiltration. That's snow melting and coming in through the foundation. That's water running down the street and into your garage or into your basement. That's anything that has to do with groundwater. There is sewage backup that is I think, understood, and it is one of the bylaw, or there is a bylaw in Beaconsfield that requires un clapet anti-retour. So sewage backup is important to have. Leakage through the roof, for whatever reason, bad caulking, bad flashing, old shingles, skylights that have failed, that is a separate type of insurance. And broken pipes, that's pipe leading to your toilet. Brakes, little speedway brakes, that's going to be yet another kind of insurance. So please be aware that these are the 4 requirements for flooding alone. First thing I can ask you to do is to clean up. Well, I started in Point Claire in 1979, so that's 46 years ago. I've been in, I can honestly say, hundreds of basements in Point Claire and elsewhere on the West Island, and I would state that there are as many as 1 in 5 basements on the West Island that look just like this. If your basement looks like this, you are in for a loss. We're the keepers of the memories and the keepers of the past, and I can't store it all in the kitchen, so I got to put it in the basement. If you're storing it like this, please don't. There's a better way. This, I hope, for somebody is going to be a wake-up call. Everything in a basement should be at least 4 inches off the floor. And anything below 1 foot should be in plastic containers. No irreplaceable items should be stored in the basement. Those photo albums with those irreplaceable images of your kids, your nephews, your family, your grandkids, probably digital images by now, and there's other ways of getting those back. But the old stuff is not going to come back after it's gotten wet. Everything on this shelf is in plastic containers. I allow myself, because I know my building, I know where the water comes from and where it goes around my building. I could get a foot of water in the basement. This stuff is going to not be affected by that, okay? And nothing above it will be. If you have a floor drain in your basement, I have seen maybe the same number, maybe 1 in 5 basements where the carpeting is put down on the concrete floor in the basement. Nice, clean, all that sort of thing, but they very often carpet right over the floor drain. A matter of fact, probably 30%, 40% of the carpeted basements I've seen have the carpet going over the floor drain. That's a problem. That's a problem, A, because any water that comes into the house isn't going to filter through the carpet very well. More importantly, that floor drain has a trap in it, trap like under the kitchen sink, a little piece of bent pipe that water stays in, and a trap in a sink automatically fills every time water goes down. because the water never goes down the basement floor, that trap dries out, and you can be very easily filling your house with sewer gas, odorous or not. The trap under a floor drain in a basement must have water put in it regularly, and regularly means, in my view, once a quarter at least. So once a season, take a bucket of water or a pitcher of water twice and fill up the floor drain, if only to prevent sewer gas from coming back up into the house. That includes methane, that includes all kinds of ethyl methyl bad stuff that might be in there, and maybe the cause of symptoms that you might already have, constant headaches or whatever. Like that's not my area of expertise, but I know what's coming out of the drain ain't good for you. Let me go back. A word on French drains. If you live in a house, or if the house that you're living in was built before 1970, it's logical to assume that the French drains no longer function. Prior to 1970, the French drains were put in without a socket. It was a perforated pipe, little bigger than this, with a bunch of holes in it. Right? This goes all the way around the foundation, collects the water from around the bottom of the foundation, from the footing, brings it into the sump pit, typically. Before 1970, they typically did not have socks, geotextile membranes around these pipes, so they filled with silt. Over the years, these pipes, without that level of protection, that level of isolation, allow the silt in, and that silt prevents water from going through. So the water may start coming in through other crevices in the foundation. It'll find its way under the footing, up around the footing, and then in the seam between the slab floor and the concrete foundation. You don't live in a bathtub. These are different pieces of the puzzle that are put together, and they are not waterproof. And if they ever were waterproof with movements, and they're not waterproof anymore. You can't make that assumption. So that's a word on French drains. A brief word on water heaters. One of the things that you're supposed to do with your hot water heater is to drain it once a year. You are advised by any maker of electric hot water heaters or other hot water heaters that they should be drained once a year. I just sit there and say, why can't I kill two birds with one stone? Maybe I don't want to put all that hot water down the sump pit because I don't know what the hot water is going to do. So maybe this morning, it's Saturday morning, I'll get up, I'll turn off the power to the hot water heater. I'll go have a nice long shower, let some cold water run into the hot water heater, and then connect a short piece of hose to the drain on the bottom and drain it out into the sump pit. I'll be flushing out all the accumulated crap in the water tank, the water heater, putting it in the sump pit, and exercising both systems at the same time. Once the whole thing is done and the water's running clear and I've gone outside to make sure it is actually exiting where it's supposed to exit, oh, now I've done the best I can possibly do. I go back in, close the valve on the hot water tank, turn the power back on, and go back to life. Having to wait probably 3 hours for the hot water to heat up again. Kill two birds with one stone. You've done yourself a favor. Sump pumps. There are different types. Denis and I both happen to like the column type because the motor is fully out of the water unless the unthinkable happens, or not the unthinkable, but the unplanned forable happens. Most sump pumps today are, however, submersible. Technology has gotten better from that point of view. An inexpensive pump, it might look like this. And an inexpensive pump will have, and all pumps must have, in my view, a float switch. When the water goes up, the pump turns on. When the water comes down, the pump turns off. Part of the maintenance that you have to do, if this is the type of pump that you have in your home, is to make sure that there's nothing impeding this from going up and down, either because the pump moved or because some debris has fallen in there, or for whatever reason. If this doesn't come up, and you can hear it, When this is vertical, it makes a power connection, the pump turns on. When this is down, there's no power, nothing's going to get pumped out. So if this is impeded from coming up, pump's not going to work, okay? So they must have a water detection or sensing system. Most pumps that we have at home have this kind of, or similar, right? Please make sure that they operate. Other pumps have, newer pumps have an electronic connection. So when the water gets this high, it closes a circuit between these two connections, the pump turns on. Most pumps are either column or submersible in terms of type of pump. There are backup pumps that could be column, that could be submersible. Most of them are submersible. Horsepower matters. And you have a choice, and I'll get back to that in a second because I put a picture in, I think on the next slide, that deals with that directly. The discharge hose or pipe matters as well. You can see the difference between a 1.5 inch and a 2 inch pipe, right? Forget the pipe itself. How much water can be carried through this versus that? It's almost double, right, for the 1/2 inch difference. This is going to be less restrictive because of its construction versus this. This is corrugated, has the same finish inside as it does outside to make it a little durable and a little bendable. But that causes friction in the lines. So this is going to be smaller than the 1/2 inch that it is rated at. So having the right discharge is important. And having the right discharge, it's not good enough to have it. Has it been maintained? Does it work? Has a squirrel moved in? Have leaves or other debris found their way in? It's worth finding out where this pipe discharges, and by running the pump, does the water actually come out? Right? That'll probably give you a pretty good indication of whether or not there's a family of squirrels living in there, or chipmunks, or whatever happens to like living in a pipe. I'll get back to horsepower. If it's more than 10 years old, because the lifespan for these pumps are typically between 10 and 15 years, so you might even want to do it before 10, but if it's more than 10 years old, either replace it, or if it seems to be working well, you may choose to do what I did. I went and bought a $150 pump and $40 with hose and a bin, and the pump lives in the bin, the hose lives in the bin, all the other connections that are required live in the bin. When my pump fails, I've got my own backup. It lives on the shelves that you saw before with the yellow lid, emergency sump pump and discharge hose. If the pump in the hole doesn't work, I have a completely autonomous and complete system, pump, hose, ready to go out a window.
Out a window,
Yep. Yep.
but it's elevated.
Sure it is. Sure it is. The pump isn't going to care much, but I'm going to get back to that with horsepower. Okay, so that is an idea. Rather than putting in a new pump that is, by definition, typically a single point failure, putting in a backup system, whether it's battery operated or not. One thing in Beaconsfield that it cannot be is hydraulically operated. You can't have a water-fed pump emptying your sewage because it works on a Venturi principle. And you need about 10 gallons of water to suck up 1 gallon. So from a water conservation point of view, not a good idea. And is not allowed in Beaconsfield. Let's talk about horsepower. Let's talk about cost. These are 3 similar pumps. The pictures are effectively identical and may very well be identical. But here's a half horsepower, 1 horsepower, and 1/3 horsepower pump. They all appear to be the same. One's $299, one's $329, one's $369. They are all 2-inch output. Okay? What's the difference? Well, $30 between A and B and $40 between B and C. But if you're spending $300 anyway, there is a big difference between 1/3 horsepower and 1 horsepower. Right? 1 horsepower is highly desirable. In fact, for my use, I wouldn't use anything less than 2/3 horsepower. Most sump pumps in our homes are 1/4 horse. There's some thirds, or there's some quarters. There's probably a lot of thirds at this point because I suspect many of them have been updated. There's probably some 1/2 horsepowers out there. 2/3 and 1 horsepower are probably rare. I haven't seen many of them at all. 2/3 horsepower is the tool that's going to last the longest because it does the most work of any of them. So it cycles less often, it's more efficient. Being more efficient, it wears less and simply lasts longer. So this is stuff that, you know, when you're shopping, it's going to take you time to do it. And you know what, for $30 at least, like $30 today isn't what $30 was in 1970. And even going from the smallest option to the biggest option is only $70. You don't get dinner and a beer for $70. This is the only appliance in the basement, of this basement, that has a drain, that is connected to the drain. So there's no washing machine, there's no shower, there's no toilet in the basement. If you can't access it, you can't maintain it. Right? If it's a P-trap under a carpet in the floor, or worse, how many people, by a show of hands, live in a house with a raised floor basement? 1, 2. If you've got a raised floor basement, somebody took the time and the trouble to taper, typically 2x4s or 2x3s, to raise and flatten the floor in the basement. They put linoleum tile on it, they put whatever they want on it. There's probably a floor drain under there. And the sewer gas is still coming up. And the water's not going down. And when the basement floods, the water has nowhere to go because it's got a floor in the way of the drain. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to take a chainsaw through the water to cut through the floor that somebody spent a whole lot of money putting in because the drain's under it. I'm like you. I'm not made of money. If I was, I probably wouldn't be standing here. And you probably wouldn't be sitting here because you just buy the answer you need. So a basement sink must have a backflow valve, and every other subgrade device connected to a drain needs to have a backwater valve at least in the main exit. Typically, because it has to be maintainable, it has to be accessible. Other measures, and this is where things get a little bit interesting, maybe. If you have an alarm system on your home, and many homes in Beaconsfield have burglar and fire and CO2 alarms, or carbon monoxide, CO alarms, ask your alarm company if they have, and they all do, a flood sensor. And the flood sensor is something that sits on the floor. It's either wired or wireless. Just like this, if water connects the 2 pins on the bottom, it sets off the alarm. The alarm is monitored by your central. Your central calls you. If you're in Brazil, it'll call your son, who's the backup number, and then you've got somebody to go and take that pump out and put it in, and that's one way of doing it. Okay, so that is an option. Up to you to determine whether or not you need that option or you want that option. It is always a good idea to keep snow shoveled from around the foundation wherever possible. Obviously can't do it everywhere, but where it's possible, do it. It's bad exercise. I'm not going to tell you it's good exercise, but it's going to save you a whole lot of risk in terms of the melting that happens. This is the corner of my backyard. Earlier this year, the snow came in big quantities in late February, early March, and then it started warming up pretty quickly. I said, you know what? The rate at which it's warming up suggests to me that maybe this stuff could be gone in a few days. We ended up being lucky, and the weather modulated itself. It got warm, and then it froze, and it got warm. It was good for maple syrup and for flooding basements. They both like that stuff. But keeping the water away, and the white pipe that you see from the downspout that normally fills my water collector for watering plants, I don't leave the bucket out, the tub out, because it freezes. So I leave it lying down, nothing gets in, nothing freezes, and the diverter moves any water 10 feet away from the foundation. You can see where the water continues to run away from my house into a common area. So this is easy stuff that you can do. To be honest, I don't think I even bought that piece of plastic pipe. I probably found it somewhere. And I said, whoa, this would be great. I can knock over my water container and bang this thing on, and it helps. Other measures, this one caught my eye recently as I was preparing for this talk. This is an outdoor sump pit. There's a new construction happening in my neighborhood, and I saw this pipe sticking out of the ground, and moreover, I saw an end of it on the construction site, so I went over and took a picture. This is a 3-foot diameter, 11 foot deep. There is a pump at the bottom of it. You can see it there, and the pipe comes all the way up and goes out the top, and where it goes now probably doesn't matter because it's still in a work in progress. My question is, and I showed this to Denny, I said, is this something that's allowed by code? He says, I don't know. This is new. This is new. I've never seen it before, which is why I was interested in it. I don't know that this is a good idea because 11 feet down, 3 feet in diameter, it better have a pretty closed top on it because there's animals and kids that'll fall in that. Let's assume it does. Again, my mind always works. Risk identification, analysis, mitigation, elimination. If the pump is under the floor in our basement, will it freeze? Not as long as the house is warm. It's protected from the cold. Is this pump protected from the cold? Well, they're going to put a top on it. That doesn't keep the cold out. It's the 4 feet of ground of earth that protects something 4 feet down from freezing. I don't know what happens to this, and I don't know what's going to happen to this by the time it's implemented or finished. Right? But I found this interesting. Maybe this is something that will happen in our futures. Questions out. I'm not recommending this. I don't know. I found it interesting, though, and relevant to today. Trees and branches, storms. I'm coming up, need to pedal a little quicker. Trees and branches. You don't want that happening, right? With increased winds, snowfall, freezing rain, all that sort of thing, lightning strikes, this is the kind of thing that we need to have on our risk map. What can you do about it? Well, you can look at the trees that surround your property and determine whether or not they need to be looked at by an arborist. These are the people that can really help you out. I do have some experience in this. I can't tell you how many trees I've either cleaned up or cut down or whatever over the years. One of the things that you can look for is certainly anything out of balance. This tree, because hydro has chopped off a good chunk of it, is leaning towards the house, and most of its weight is on that side. So if that tree is going to fall, for whatever reason, it's likely headed for the house. Right? Trees need to be in balance. Right? They need to have as much on the left side as on the right side, on the front and on the back. Right? Otherwise, they're not in balance. As soon as they're not in balance, you've got physical tensions in the wood that are just going to keep it moving in its crookedness. One of the things that you can look for and should look for in any tree that has a bifurcation or a crotch, something that's called crotch rot. And this is actually a good picture of one. It's on that tree next to the blue bin. Water has gotten down into where the tree has grown up, and it has rotted the core of the tree to the point where debris falls in, dust and dirt and earth and leaves and all that sort of stuff composts itself, and there's a little new tree growing out of it because a seed, probably one of those maple helicopters, fell in there and took root. Now there's a tree growing in a tree. That tells me for sure that tree's going to fall down. When it does, look at the height of it. That's a huge tree. And it's a city tree. Not your responsibility, not my responsibility. City's not responsible for anything on my side of the water entry, as a rule. On the outside of that, I'm not responsible for anything. This is why we pay taxes. If you think there's a city tree adjacent to your property, call the city, and you think there's something wrong with it, call the city. The city has an arborist who will happily go and have a look at your tree and tell you it's okay or it's not okay. That's something you can do at no cost. Your taxes pay for its time. Disease identification and remediation. We all know about emerald ash borer, and before that we had something with the elm, Dutch elm disease back in the 70s, I think it was. I can't begin to tell you whether or not my trees are diseased unless the leaves don't look well. Unless, you know, I mean, there's some things that we can do because we have plants in our house, and you know, we can tell. If there's any question, call an arborist. If it's on the city property, call the city. Auxiliary power system, everybody's aware of portable generators, fixed generators, these Generac things we've seen around. They're great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. Battery systems are coming into the market big time. Prices are coming down on battery-based systems, solar generated or otherwise. And even EV, electric vehicle-based systems, are becoming options for powering your house. Solar panels and battery walls are becoming more de rigueur, more popular as the market becomes more and more saturated. The price becomes lower and lower. So maybe this is something in our futures. I don't have one yet. I'm not a financial pioneer, but once they're in common usage, I'll adopt that technology. That's pretty cool. You can see in the picture down in the corner, this is the back corner of a pickup truck that is specifically designed to power your house when there's a power failure. So as EVs evolve, the energy that is stored in the car might be, depending on what you're looking for and what you need, and the risk analysis that you've done, might be an option. Good to have on hand: flashlights, floodlights, crank battery radios, extra batteries. This is all stuff that you've heard before, but I have to put it in to be a little bit comprehensive. I will not provide any information on what to do in a fire other than get the HE double hockey sticks out. Grab your cell phone if you can, get out of the house. Right? As a former fire officer, the Service de Sécurité Incendie de Montréal is very willing to come to your house and provide you with some information on what to do, how to do it. If you've got, you need to have 2 escape routes. The back door doesn't count if you haven't shoveled.
No, true.
Right? These are things that you need to look at separately. Please, this is a whole presentation in itself. A go bag is something that you may choose to have if you, like me, are aging and we need medications for whatever reason. Well, you know what? Spare meds would be a good thing to have. And if they're in a go bag, and my go bag lives in my car, and my car I know I can access, even if the house is on fire. Anyway, that's my risk analysis. Mitigation and elimination has been satisfied with something like this. It's good to have a look at. Battery-powered fans can be convenient. Please, in a heat wave, do not weather the storm alone. We've already seen too many seniors die of heat stroke in Montreal. We're not immune to this. Rely on your neighbors. Rely on your children. If you don't have children, call the city. If you think it's the right thing for you to do, the city has a seniors list that you can get on, and they will check on you. If you think you're going to be in a position where you need help, get on the list. Community resilience involves proactive planning, collaboration, and resource allocation. That's where you spend your money and where they spend our money. And recover from severe weather impacts. Fostering adaptability and sustainability. Homeowners have a role to play too. Conclusions: significant risks lie ahead of us. Identifying and mitigating those risks is something that you can and must, if you want to be protected, participate in. Resources are available to you. An ounce of prevention, here's a good old British saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. One final thought, we tend to act in the summer. It's a beautiful day outside today, nice and warm, and yeah, no problem with a sump pump. But we need to think in winter when we make decisions in the summer, because if it freezes, it's not going to work. Okay, so we need to think, put ourselves in the winter time. In other words, don't put your spare sump pump in the cabana at the back of the yard where you got to spend a day to shovel it out to get the spare sump pump to put in your house that's now underwater. Okay, so this is the kind of thinking that I think we all need to do. Websites, I put them in yellow. Canada has lots of stuff. Quebec has lots of stuff. Montreal has lots of stuff. Beaconsfield has a great one. Red Cross is something that we might miss otherwise. I know that these hypertext links are easy to click on when they're in a presentation and they're hard to type. But if you search, Google, emergency preparedness, Canada, you'll get to the first one. Emergency preparedness, Quebec, you'll get to the second one. Okay, one way or another, you're going to find it. Emergency preparedness, anything in yellow. Montreal's site is really very good, even in English. Flooding, hazardous materials, earthquakes, haven't talked about those, could happen. We live, St. Lawrence Seaway is a fault and an earthquake zone. Periods of extreme cold, major winter storms, combination or shortage of drinking water, contamination. Or shortage of drinking water. This is all good stuff to know. I would like to thank our Public Works Department here in Beaconsfield. When these people show up at our door, they're here, they come to my door to fix a problem. They didn't create it. I've come to learn recently that they take a whole lot of abuse that they simply don't deserve. They're here to help us. I'm thankful that they are here, thankful enough to say so in public. I hope it was worth the time it took to sit here and listen to me blab on. This is not my computer, so I get to walk away.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Cheers.